Hi, I'm Jilly G. Welcome to my kitchen. Today I'm going to show you how to make a gluten-free brown Betty. And today I'll be using pears. You can make this with really any fruit that you like. I have a lot of pears, so I'm using pears today. So the first thing I need to do is preheat my oven. And then I just have a loaf of my gluten-free bread here that I'm going to cut into slices and get toasting in the oven. If you have a toaster, use that. I don't have a toaster, so I'm just going to toast all of these in my oven, and then I'll flip them over just to make sure I dry them out really well. And that's just a regular loaf of bread that's in my cookbook. You could use any bread that you like. You can use biscuits, crackers. It really doesn't matter because we're going to make it into crumbs anyways. But a traditional brown Betty is used with breadcrumbs. So while I'm waiting for my bread to toast, I can start cutting up my pears, and we need 6 cups of cut up pears. You can cut them in slices if you want to, but I like to cut them in chunks. And I also like to leave the skins on. This is such a fast, easy dessert to make. And it's perfect for this time of year where things are starting to cool down a little bit. You can serve this dessert warm or cold. I actually like it warm with some whipped cream or maybe even ice cream. Cut off any bad spots. And I have a bucket down here to put my cores and bad spots in for the compost. And I'm going about bite-sized pieces just to make it easy to eat. And these are Bartlett pears, but I think you could use whatever pear that you like. And this is also a really good recipe if some of your pears are still a little on the green side. They'll soften up in the oven. But all of mine I think are really ripe, which is perfect. And there's hardly any ingredients that go into this dessert. Just pears, a little bit of butter. I've got some honey, although you could use whatever sugar you like, a little bit of salt and cinnamon, a lemon, and then I've got a cup of toasted chopped almonds. You don't have to put nuts in this, or you could use your favorite nut, but I really like to add nuts in fruit desserts like this. And then I just periodically turn over my pieces of bread so they get evenly toasted. You can use stale bread or even frozen bread. Sometimes when I have ends of a loaf of bread or one extra biscuit or something like that, I'll just throw them into a freezer bag and put them in the freezer for recipes like this. But because I've used all of my bread pieces from the freezer, I just made a loaf of bread, and it should be the amount that we need. We just need 2 cups of breadcrumbs. And I think 1 more pear will be the 6 cups of pears that we need. And if it's a little bit extra, that's just fine. And that's closer to 7 cups, but I don't mind. And then I've got 1 lemon here. You could grate in the rind for some lemon zest, but I'm not going to today. I'm just going to use the juice. And then it's just 1 lemon. The juice of 1 lemon, and we'll just pour that on our pears. And then I'm also going to stir in a 1/4 cup of honey. And then I'm just going to give this a really good stir. Get my lemon juice and honey mixed around with my pears. So I'm going to get this cleaned up and wait for my bread to finish toasting, and then we can finish the rest of our dessert. So now that my bread is toasted, I'm just going to break it apart and put it in my food processor. It's cool enough to handle. You don't have to chop this up with a food processor. You could just break it apart and have big chunks of bread if you want to. But I like it finely chopped, so it is breadcrumbs. And then we just need 2 cups. I'm just going to very carefully measure 2 cups of breadcrumbs. Get all of these that made a mess. And the nice thing about something like this is you could just make all of these into breadcrumbs, and then you've got breadcrumbs for something else. You can put them on top of a casserole, or just crumble them and put them in the freezer for a later use. That should be enough. So there's my 2 cups of breadcrumbs. I'm going to throw in my 1 cup of toasted chopped almonds, my 1/4 teaspoon of salt and cinnamon. And I'm just going to mix my crumbs and my nuts and that salt and cinnamon just to get them mixed up before I add in my melted butter. And then I've got 4 tablespoons of melted butter, so a 1/4 cup. And it's melted and cooled. And then just mix this together. And once you've got your crumbs and your nuts evenly coated in your butter, bring over a greased casserole dish. And then bring over my pears. So we're going to layer this in the casserole dish in 3 layers of crumbs and 2 layers of fruit. So measure out about 1/3 of your breadcrumbs and nuts. You could just eyeball, it doesn't have to be perfect. And then you want it to be kind of in an even layer. And then bring over your pears, lemon juice, and honey. And we'll add in about half of our pears right now. And I'm not worried about a lot of the juice right now because that will all be poured on with the next layer of pears. And then we'll go another 1/3 of our crumbs and our nuts. And now for the rest of our pears. And now the last layer of crumbs and nuts. And I don't mind if a little bit of the fruit is peeking through. So now that this is ready to go in the oven, just making sure I've got my crumbs in an even layer here, or evenly dispersed. If you're using a casserole dish that is full all the way to the top, you'll want to put this on a cookie sheet in case it bubbles over. I'm not worried that mine will. I have a lot of room here for it to bubble. And this will go in the oven, again at 350 for about 30 minutes, or until you see that the juices are bubbling. If you notice that your breadcrumbs are getting too dark, you can cover this with foil. You can just see it bubbling around the edges. And you can hear it. You could serve this right now, but I'm going to let it settle down for just a minute. And then I've got some whipped cream here that we can put on top. If you serve it hot right now and put your whipped cream on or even ice cream, it will just melt. So we'll let this cool down for just a minute. So it's been about 15 minutes. And it's still pretty warm. Even though it's still pretty warm, it shouldn't completely melt my whipped cream. Move that out of the way. Let's give it a bite. It is so good. And it's warm enough that my whipped cream is starting to melt a little bit. And even though there's just a little bit of cinnamon in there, most of the flavor that's coming through is the pears. And the breadcrumbs aren't super crunchy, except for the very top layer, but the nuts give it a lot of crunch. And I think the lemon juice is just the right amount of lemon juice. If you have pears and you're not sure what to make, this is the perfect dessert. And I suppose you don't even have to use the breadcrumbs, but that is what makes it a Brown Betty. Such a great fall dessert, great way to use pears, great way to use breadcrumbs. Let me know what you think if you make this recipe. Maybe you've never heard of a Brown Betty before. Such a simple dessert. Serve it warm or cold. With whipped cream or ice cream, it's a perfect dessert. And it's not super heavy because most of it is fruit. But thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have any questions or comments, let me know, and I'll see you on the next one.